Tonight, U.S. President Barack Obama is bidding his country and the world farewell. Goodbye to a leader most people really like. Hello to a legacy most say they don't. I'm Brent Goff, and this is The Day.
Since the days of George Washington, presidents have delivered some form of final message while in office. A farewell address to the American people.
So help you God?
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Yes, we can! Yes, we can! Yes, we can!
With respect to Guantanamo, it is true that I have not been able to close the darn thing because of the congressional restrictions that have been placed on us. But my main message is to the parents of Trayvon Martin. You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. Somehow this has become routine. The reporting is routine. My response here at this podium ends up being routine. A red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus. That would change my equation. This idea that somehow, oh, this is about Obama preserving his legacy. Keep in mind, I'm not the one who named it Obamacare. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much, everybody. Let's go home.
Also on the show tonight, a Syrian refugee and a selfie with the German chancellor. This man is now taking Facebook to court over fake news. In a moment, Margaret Sullivan from The Washington Post tells me why the term fake news, while it may need a day in court, it certainly, she says, deserves to be retired. We'll explain coming up. We begin the day with, as you heard, a leader, his legacy, and his last chance to pull it all together. Tonight, U.S. President Barack Obama is delivering his farewell address. Now, his parting words will fall on friendly ears, both at home and abroad. In fact, his popularity at the end of his 8-year term is strong. Most people in the U.S. and around the world say they like the man Barack Obama. When it comes to his legacy and the world today compared to 2008, it's hard not to hear those chants of "yes, we can" morphing into moans of, well, you didn't really. In a moment, thoughts on the tomorrow about to break without Obama. But first, we go back in time to a time that seems now so long ago.
He was their hero.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
America's first black president. Young, reformist, liberal. Expectations were enormous. He won the Nobel Peace Prize as soon as he'd taken office for promises to reduce nuclear weapons. But the supposed peacemaker continued and expanded the drone war against suspected terrorists, killing untold numbers in the Afghanistan-Pakistan border region. He eliminated America's greatest enemy, Osama bin Laden. Yet Islamist terror emerged in Iraq and Syria in the form of Islamic State, and the region spiraled out of control. Syria's President Bashar al-Assad's use of chemical weapons crossed what Obama had called his red line, but the US failed to take action. This left Russia in a powerful position as Assad's strongest backer. Relations between Putin and Obama froze. The tension showed during the G8 summit in 2013. And US sanctions against Russia for its involvement in the Ukraine conflict made things even frostier. He received a ticking off from Germany's Angela Merkel after it emerged America's National Security Agency had tapped her phone. Friends don't spy on friends, she said. But she remained a loyal ally. At home, problems piled up. Fury grew over institutional racism. People were dying. And it was painfully clear that America's first black president did not mean racism was finished. Politically, he was hobbled by the Republicans, who dominated Congress and blocked him time and again. He increasingly used executive orders to get legislation through. This worked for healthcare reform. But Obamacare is a major target for the incoming Republican administration. They're intent on repealing it. The bright young senator from 2008 is now a veteran president, and he's been doing all he can to create a legacy that outlives him. He secured a last-minute deal with Iran to limit their nuclear program. And he released a number of prisoners regarded as no further threat from Guantanamo Bay. Hopes are high that even the keenest oil speculators will not be able to overturn his recent ban of drilling in a number of national parks. Yet all of this could be at stake as he hands the presidency to Donald Trump.
There is the handshake. Joining me now here at the big table is Boris Foreman from the JFK Institute at the Free University here in Berlin, a familiar face here when we talk about U.S. politics and government and understanding it for the world. Boris, it's good to see you. So what's happening tonight? Obama, is he saying goodbye, or is he trying one last time to make sure that we remember him the way he wants us to?
Well, yes, he's saying goodbye, but I think it does have a symbolic dimension to it. He's only the 10th president to do an actual farewell address, and the first one who did it by writing an article in a newspaper was George Washington, and he was trying to make a point, I think, that is reflected in what Barack Obama has been trying to do, which is to say the only thing that can threaten American democracy is to be meddling with foreign policy and to give in to sectionalism within the U.S. And this is a point, these are 2 points that are more up to date than ever.
I mean, so what you're saying, that he is drawing a very, very long arc of history here by going all the way back to George Washington.
Which I don't find so surprising. I mean, this is not the core of it, but there is this symbolic ring to it. And this is something similar he did when he spoke in Athens a couple of weeks ago and talked about democracy when we discussed it at the time and tried to embed his narrative of what he did as a president in a longer trajectory.
How important is Obama's departure for the world?
Well, I mean, it signals or it symbolizes something that has been going on elsewhere. We've discussed Brexit. We've seen that Trumpism has certain structural features that it shares with Brexit. There is a shift towards the right in many countries. There is a rise of neo-nationalisms. And so the end of Barack Obama also signals a certain end to a plural or pluralistic understanding of societies, a certain progressive stance on social policy. And this is the big symbol, which also has repercussions around the world.
I mean, everything that you're listing there, a lot of people would say, especially if you voted for Barack Obama, they would say that this is an indication of the failure of his administration. I mean, is he leaving he came in as almost a messiah. Is he leaving office as even less than a mere mortal?
Yeah. That's the big question. I mean, yes, the expectations were very high, and we saw it also when the Nobel Prize was given to him. So Europeans in particular were very fond of Obama from the very start. What is not quite so present in the discussion today, I think, is that a lot of the things he had to do were stealth policies. A lot of the things he had to do in a context of strong polarization, and he had to try and overcome these partisan divides by pushing certain things without boasting about them afterwards.
Give me an example when you talk about stealth policy.
For example, Pell Grants and student loans have been changed around, have been extended to student populations just 1 week after the Affordable Care Act. So this was something nobody really talked about, but which had a tremendous impact and will continue to have a tremendous impact for student populations. Quite interesting that he wasn't able to then go on and boast about it, which now might be a problem, because sometimes political scientists say policy speaks back. So once it's established, it creates certain constituencies, which makes it hard afterwards to repeal those legacies.
Well,
right?
shouldn't that work then for the Affordable Health Care Act or Obamacare, right? I mean,
that's one of the hopes, absolutely, that there are certain institutional path dependencies that keep it in the spot. The problem is, because of polarization, Obama also had to resort to a lot of executive orders. We just heard that. The problem is that these executive orders can easily be repealed by the new president.
right. What would you say, Boris, is Obama's biggest foreign policy achievement and his biggest failure? But let's start with the achievement. I mean, the world had a lot of expectations 8 years ago.
Right, and we witnessed the Arab Spring in 2009, which was an expression also of these hopes in technological advances in telecommunications, making it possible to topple dictators. But these hopes, of course, have been frustrated, which is sort of the mirror side of these expectations that were put into Barack Obama. What are his major foreign policy achievements? I think he did set a certain tone of collaboration and multilateralism that we hadn't seen for a long time before. The problem is that there seems to be a shift in that kind of rhetoric now.
I want you to take a listen to what he said just a couple of days ago about what he considers to be his biggest achievements. Just take a listen to that.
Together, we've turned an economy that was shrinking and losing jobs into one that's growing and creating jobs, with poverty falling, incomes rising, and wages that have jumped faster over the past few years than at any time in the past 4 decades. Together, we've achieved what eluded politicians of both parties for a century. We've moved 20 million more Americans from uninsured to insured, ending the days of discrimination against up to half of Americans who have a pre-existing condition, and secured new rights and protections for everybody with health insurance.
I mean, that's a monumental change in the United States, and the Republicans now say that they are going to repeal it. There are a lot of commentators saying that Donald Trump is going to take a chainsaw to Obama's legacy as soon as he gets into office. Do you see that coming? And do you see President Obama now worried about that?
I do, and I do think that during the election campaigns of Clinton, much of the support was also influenced by a certain impulse to try and protect his own legacy, which is just normal. And also the actions he has taken in the last 2 months or so have been attempts to push for certain rigidities which Trump can't just unravel. But one of the achievements that Obama was just talking about was, of course, the economic crisis.
Yeah.
The problem is it's a non-event. Of course, it happened. Of course, it had major impacts, negative impacts. But it's hard to have a certain public relations stunt about it if it didn't lead to collapse.
That's true. And obviously, we can't, talk about his departure without talking about Syria. There was the red line. That was not a red line.
Right.
And we have Syria, a proxy war, if you call that, where Russia has won.
That is true.
And I mean, so this has to go down in history then as something where his inaction led to, a weakening of U.S. influence? Is that what's happened?
Well, it was a very difficult situation, very complex situation. Let's not forget in this discussion about the broader region. And this is something that Republicans have been trying to do, to rewrite history, basically, to say Obama was responsible for the instability in the region, which simply is not very accurate if you think back to George W. Bush and the decisions taken after 9/11.
Yeah.
There's a longer history to that. And Obama, of course, needs to take partial blame, but there's a longer trajectory to it.
And we know the rough draft of history, which is being written now, of course, will have to be, changed many times, right?
It's going to be revised.
It will be revised many times. Boris Foreman, as always, thanks for coming in and helping us to understand and read that rough draft of history. We appreciate it.
Thanks.